In God we trust. We are going to start grade 6 exam revision pack. We're going to study about ancient Greece. Ancient Greece is a peninsula in southern Europe. The word peninsula here means a land that's surrounded by water from three sides. So the civilization of ancient Greece started in 2000 BC or before Christ and ended with the establishment of the Roman Empire in 146 BC. When it comes to history of the ancient Greece, the Greeks are believed to have migrated southward toward Greek peninsula in several waves. The first wave started 3000 BC or before Christ, and the last was the Dorian invasion. Homer is a great Greek poet and writer who wrote the famous epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey. Did you know about 750 BC, the period from 11th century BC to the 8th century, is known as the Dark Age. The most famous period of ancient Greek civilization is the Classical Age, which lasted from 480 BC to 323 BC. Let's move on to city-states of the ancient Greece. The city-states actually were called the polis, right? The poli is the singular form and the polis are the plural form. So there was no countries at that time. There were all the city-states called the polis. Athens was a very important city at that time, and it was a part of the Greek mainland actually. So talking about Athens, the democracy actually was a new idea that started in Athens. Sparta was actually another important city of ancient Greece. Sparta was a polis on Peloponnese, which was hilly and rocky area. Boys were sent to barracks at the age of 7 in Sparta. Why? Why? It's very important. Because they wanted to learn how to defend their city-states. When it comes to the Persian War between Persia and the ancient Greece, the Persian had a kingdom, had a king which was called Darius, and he was very famous and strong at that time. When the Persian king landed 26 miles away from the Athens, a messenger named Pheidippides saw the Persian army and he ran non-stop. He ran without stop to the Athenians to warn them from the invasion. After gasping his news, Pheidippides died from exhaustion. He was so tired that he died, and the marathon run was named in honor of him. So there's the question here. Did you know that today's long races are called marathons in honor of the Pheidippides, who ran 26 miles non-stop and he died afterwards? Let's move on to the Peloponnesian War. Peloponnesian War was an important war between the Greek city-states, and it was actually between Athens and Sparta. These two cities. It was like a war inside the Greece. It was not a war of a Greece with another country. It was inside the Greece. It was between Athens and Sparta. After the Peloponnesian War, we have to talk about Alexander the Great, who was a great general, and he was the one who could defeat the Persian Empire, starting with Turkey, then Phoenicia, Egypt, and further east to Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, and India as we have today. The Hellenistic period was one of the prosperity and learning periods. Actually, the combination of knowledge of the West Asia and India, that of Greeks, led to great achievements in science, philosophy, and art. When it comes to daily life in Greece, Greek houses were made of sun-dried bricks on a foundation of stones. So when we talk about the roles of men and women, men were the head of the family and they had to do the important things. They had to provide food for the family, they were engaged in politics. Women, on the other hand, were doing house stuff like taking care of children, preparing food, cleaning their house, and stuff like that. When it comes to food and clothing in ancient Greece, the Greek diet consisted mainly of bread, olives, figs, cheese, vegetables, fruits, and fish, and also honey. Beef was so expensive, therefore, it was rarely eaten. So the Greeks contributed to civilizations in many different ways. Philosophy, literature, the Olympic Games were just a few of the contributions the Greeks civilization to the other civilization, actually, to the modern civilization, let's say. So let's see what was the philosophy. The philosophy is actually made of two words, phla and sophy, which together they mean the love of wisdom, right? So philo means love, sophy means wisdom. So philosophy means the love of wisdom, or in other words, it means the art of thinking. The art of thinking, right? Is it clear? So talking about the famous philosophers of that time, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle were the famous and influential philosophers at that time. When it comes to the literature of the ancient Greece, we talked about the two most famous epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, that were written by a wandering storyteller called Homer. So the Homer was the writer of the two famous epics called the Iliad and the Odyssey. When it comes to the Olympic Games were held every 4-year period, and it was called the Olympiad. It included many different sports such as wrestling, boxing, pentathlon events combining long jumps, javelin throw, scull throw, and other stuff. Did you know that the first modern Olympic Games were held in Athens, in Greece, in 1896? It's very interesting, huh? The first Olympic Games were held in Athens, remember, it's very important. And the Olympic flame began in ancient Olympic Games. You know, there's a kind of flame of fire they take in their hands and they run in the Olympic Games with that. And what does it resemble, or what does it symbolize? It symbolizes the death and the rebirth of the Greek heroes. Actually, the Olympic flame symbolized the death and rebirth of Greek heroes. So I hope you can study this file very well and prepare for the final exam. There's one important point I want to remind you, and that is to feel good, feel self-confident, and do your best on the exam. Best of luck for you. See you inshallah on the exam day.